Hey everybody, Asian action actor here, and I am back with another movie review, and today we are reviewing Scoob.
Here we go!
If you want, you can pull over and drop us off here.
We'll walk home.
I guess our new movie is an origin story.
Every hero should have one.
I want The Rock to play me.
Never gonna happen.
That's right, Scoob, with an exclamation point at the end. The brand new animated Scooby-Doo movie that just came out. Now, this movie was supposed to have a theatrical release, but very much like Universal Studios' Trolls 2, it debuted on streaming instead. And as far as I know, most likely is not receiving a theatrical release anymore. All right, so what did I think of this movie? Really quick, give my quick thoughts as usual before I dive into my deeper review, which will be sort of filled with spoilers. Movie was just okay. It is really a Scooby-Doo kids movie. There's nothing deep, nothing emotionally deep about the characters, nothing groundbreaking that changes or updates the Scooby-Doo mythology, in my opinion. It's just a very straightforward Scooby-Doo kids movie, just on a bigger budget than most people will usually be used to. The animation is nothing groundbreaking. I don't think, there's really a lot to be said there. Story's all right. It's, again, nothing amazing. It does smartly center around Scooby and Shaggy's relationship as best friends. Very much so it anchors the movie in that regard. I'll talk a bit more about that in the spoiler section of my review. But one thing I did love about the movie, though, is how it very smartly and effectively sets up an animated Hanna-Barbera movieverse. So I really like this aspect of it. Oh, so everyone knows that the Blue Falcon and his sidekick Dynamite are in this movie, as well as the main villain in this movie is Dick Dastardly. And there are actually other Hanna-Barbera characters that appear in this movie aside from those, which I will discuss more of in the spoiler section of my review coming up in 3, 2, 1. So, we are now in full spoiler territory, ladies and gents. You have been warned. But if you don't really care about spoilers for this movie, you can stick around to see how I feel about it in much more detail. Alright, so last we left off, I talked about the Hanna-Barbera animated movieverse that they're definitely setting up. And this by far is what I love the most about this movie. Because they set up the other characters in a way that I felt was pretty smart. They're not just there to, show up for no reason and to tease a sequel. They're there as part of the story, and the world building that they create is actually very appealing. So Blue Falcon comes out of nowhere and is trying to investigate Dick Dastardly, who is uncovering these skulls or something to get treasure or whatever. So that's pretty straightforward. Blue Falcon is a established superhero in this universe, and he's chasing after an established supervillain. That's fine. But then later on, very pleasant surprise to me. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was in the marketing and I missed it, but Captain Caveman is in this movie, and I was pretty surprised, and I loved it. They introduced Captain Caveman in this universe here by way of pretty much the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not Cinematic Universe, the Marvel Comics universe, specifically the X-Men, because there's a sort of Savage Land ripoff / homage in this movie. At one point they go to a mysterious island that still has prehistoric creatures and cavemen inhabiting it, and one of them, their champion, just happens to be Captain Caveman, right? And in the credits of this movie, well, I'll mention it now since I'm talking about the credits. There is no post-credit sequence in this movie, if you were wondering that. But in the credits, there is actually a bunch of very nice-looking arts of the Mystery Inc. I think that's what they're called. Mystery Inc. Members, Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, and so on, going on more adventures and encountering even more Hanna-Barbera characters. One of them blew my mind, totally blew my mind, because they were talking to the Johnny Quest characters. And, there's other characters there, such as Grape Ape, Adam Ant, and so on, which I am extremely excited to see in a possible sequel. Now, like I mentioned at the very start of this review, this movie is really nothing to, get excited about. It's an average kids movie. It's like totally average all around. Doesn't do anything groundbreaking in terms of animation, storytelling, and character development and whatnot. But even so, I hope they do make sequels to this movie just so I can see them flesh out the one thing that got me super happy about this movie, which is, again, the Hanna-Barbera movie universe. I would totally love to see more Johnny Quest characters that then spin off into their own proper Johnny Quest movie. Maybe Blue Falcon is successful enough that he gets his own movie as well. I would like to see more of this. I hope this movie does well enough that these movies eventually happen in some sort of capacity, Okay. Also, I was talking about how the story is, again, nothing amazing, nothing groundbreaking, nothing that you'll truly retain after you watch this movie, unless you're within the exact target audience, which is definitely children of mostly single-digit age, Unless you're like a huge Scooby-Doo fan or, like within the target audience, movie's probably not for you. But one of the things that the story does very smartly do is it grounds the movie in Scooby and Shaggy's best friend relationship. If you saw the trailers, you saw that the movie tackles how the two met for the very first time. Shaggy's a very lonely kid, and Scooby's this stray dog, and they happen to meet by fate or something, and then they're best friends forever. The movie grounds, the story of the movie grounds itself in this relationship, and you can see that these two characters really care about each other in this capacity. And there is a very short moment near the end where this pays off somewhat, that one of them has to make the choice to sacrifice himself for the other. I know this is spoiler territory, but I'm not gonna spoil it that much in case you were watching this movie and this section of the review got you interested enough to watch the movie. So it's actually one of the few moments in this movie that is very good in my opinion, aside from the Hanna-Barbera movie universe characters being established. But yeah, one of them has to choose to sacrifice himself to the other, and it definitely creates the feels, as you might say. But then again, movie plays it too safe, and the payoff is not nearly as strong as it should be. I'll leave it right there. Talking about the other characters, Blue Falcon is probably my favorite among the rest of the characters. Blue Falcon, if you've seen him in the trailers and are wondering why the hell he is acting like that, he is actually the Blue Falcon's son and not the original Blue Falcon. Blue Falcon is actually retired in this universe. And I like this take on the character primarily because it's different. Because, like, if you had the original Blue Falcon there, he would be a very predictable, probably very boring Superman type character. I am Blue Falcon, here to save the day. And, just be very straightforward like that. His son, voiced by Mark Wahlberg in this movie, is essentially pretty much a slacker / someone who is definitely not up to the task of living up to his father's legacy. And there's an interesting part in the movie where they address this actually. He's not just a total joke of a superhero throughout. He's actually, one of the reasons he's actually acting like this, aside from that just being his personality as a young male, is because he is totally like the burden of him living up to his father's legacy is always on the back of his mind, you know, and the fact that he can never be that great of a superhero, and him coming to terms with that. So it's very interesting. He's a very funny character in this one. Although, like I mentioned before, most of the jokes kind of fall flat, are pretty unfunny. But at the very least, I like this take on the character. It wasn't nearly as predictable as I thought it would be. Now, for the rest of the characters, there's Fred. Fred is Fred. But for whatever reason, he seems way dumber in this one. Fred was never the brightest member of Mystery Inc., Mystery Incorporated. But he seems way dumber in this one for whatever reason. I don't know who thought that was a great idea. I kind of didn't like it. I always thought that he was at least smarter than Shaggy and Scooby. But in this one, he seems even dumber than the two of them. Like, why? He's just really there to drive the frickin' van. And of course, be the butt of jokes. In his own way. So, that's it. He appears at the start of the movie as a little kid, meeting, you know, Shaggy and Scooby the first time. And he's like brave and headstrong and all of this. Which is how I always saw Fred. He wasn't the smartest member, but he would be sort of the bravest one that always charged into like danger and inspired everyone to tackle these mysteries. Here he's just dumb. He's just the dumb guy who loves his van. He doesn't even he and Daphne don't even have a relationship in this one. It's just him and his van. It's weird. So, I don't know, that's an oddity. And speaking of Daphne and Velma, because of the introduction of Blue Falcon and his crew, Daphne and Velma, oddly enough, are pushed even more to the side than usual. Now, I know that Daphne's there to be a damsel in distress, sometimes contributes to the story if the writers and creators can think of something for her to do. And Velma solves the mysteries and is usually the one that gives the exposition. They still do that, but in a much tinier capacity, you know? So they're both like left to the wayside, like way, way to the side, even more so than usual, which is kind of a shame. And also Velma's like Latina in this version, which doesn't bother me. I actually think it's really cool, but it's one of those things that kind of like, oh, I guess she's Latina now. All right. And Dick Dastardly, finally, the last character. Actually, you know what? He has actually a very interesting story in this one. He's not a compelling villain by any means. He is kind of funny, I guess, but again, not really. A lot of the jokes are way too kiddie for me and just fall flat in my opinion. But surprisingly, Dick Dastardly does have a story. Aside from the usual, I want power and treasure and generic supervillain stuff, you know? And interestingly enough, it does involve his dog, Muttley, to a very great extent. So Dick Dastardly and Muttley, smartly enough, there's another smart thing that the story does, are mirror images of Scooby and Shaggy's relationship to each other as best friends, because Dick Dastardly and Muttley are both inseparable in their own ways, and thus they are best friends in their own villainous ways. And it actually just very surprised me that they cared enough to give Dick freaking Dastardly that much story, you know? But even so, movies still average as hell for me. You have to really be in that kiddie target audience or be a super hardcore Hanna-Barbera / Scooby-Doo fan to really like this movie. And I am neither. I am not in either of those categories. I like Scooby-Doo. That's why I watched this movie in the first place. But, I mean, I just like him casually. You know, I was just really curious to see what this movie would bring. Especially since, you know, I saw, like, the Blue Falcon and all of that in the trailers. But in the end, I just give this a 5 out of freaking 10. It is average at best. And if you made it all the way to the end of this review, thank you very much. This has been Asian Action Actor. Please click like down below if you like this video and subscribe to see more of my creative output. And I will see you next time.